Hello, everybody, and this is Coffee Table Talk, where we talk about social media's hottest topics. And I'm hoping that my avatar is not haunted house calls. Oh, and it is, and I apologize, guys. But this is Coffee Table Talk this morning. And as you know, everybody is talking about the government shutdown. And so we'll just go over some articles and, um, we'll talk about it. How's that? Okay. So this is from the Wall Street Journal. It's talking about how the government shutdowns affect the economy. Um, So the government shutdown actually began at 12:01 this morning on Wednesday. Democrats and Republicans could not reach a short-term spending plan. As you know, or as they've said, the Democrats are advocating for Medicare changes out as a result of the Big Beautiful Bill, because the Big Beautiful Bill is going to be enacting $1 trillion in Medicare and Medicaid cuts. And so everybody is bracing for that, including hospitals, I may add. There are at least 3 hospitals in the Seattle area who are now cutting staff, and they are citing the Big Beautiful Bill. So if you think that politics doesn't impact um, your next door, it does. If you don't have the staff to take care of you, who's going to take care of you in emergency? You know what I mean? And it is like um, RFK Jr. said, we are a very sick population, you know. So, but anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. What's going to happen to federal employees? So this is going to be really important. Um, so the effect on federal workforce is important because hundreds of thousands of employees who aren't getting regular paychecks are less likely to spend money on goods and services. So if you don't have the money, you can't pay for anything. Typical shutdowns lead to unpaid furloughs. In 2019, law guarantees back pay once the shutdown concludes. So, an important question for the economy is how many workers are on the sidelines and for how long without regular pay? And like I said, this fight is because of the Big Beautiful Bill, and the Democrats are trying to reverse some of those cuts and, advocate for us. I mean, do you really want your health premiums to go up like $1,400-$1,500? No, thank you. Nobody can afford that. Um, so the federal workforce has already been hit by months of workforce reductions, restructurings, and rehirings. So they have been letting people go, and then they've been rehiring. I don't know how budget friendly that is or how much money we've actually saved, because it feels like it would be a null in the end. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, has called an Office of Management and Budget plan to prepare for firings and attempts at intimidation, and questioned whether any firings would hold up in court. So that is also the concern. President Donald Trump said that he was also going to lay off a large amount of workers as well. Um, so that's also unfortunate. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated about 750,000 federal employees could be furloughed in a shutdown. Pay would be delayed for federal employees who remain at work, such as members of the military. So essentially, military workers are also going without a paycheck, which they don't get paid a lot anyways. So their paychecks pay for their food. And oh my goodness, that is just So, and then this news article from the Wall Street Journal just goes on to say that the U.S. lost 32,000 private sector jobs in September, missing an expected increase of 45,000 jobs among economists polled by the Wall Street Journal. The Fed Reserve says that the readings, at least on the job market, are to be expected. So, what happens to private businesses? Defense, Lockheed Martin, so Silicon Valley, listen up to this. During 2013 shutdown, defense contractor Lockheed Martin furloughed 3,000 employees who worked in government facilities or relied on government inspectors to complete their work. So that's Silicon Valley right there. At the time, the government also stopped issuing permits for drilling on federal lands. So maybe he'll put an maybe President Trump will do an exception on these. What do you guys think? Export certifications for beer, wine, and spirits and loan to small businesses, homeowners, and developers. Okay. So that's also affecting our real estate stuff. That is going to suck. So listen up, everybody. If you're in real estate, um, that's gonna hurt. Without payment, small businesses that contracted with the federal government temporarily cut staff and reduce operations. So they're just comparing to the 2013 shutdown. The 2013 shutdown ultimately cut private sector job growth by about 120,000 jobs, according to an estimate from the Council of Economic Advisors. Shutdowns can also hit the life sciences industry through delayed grants and stalled Food and Drug Administration reviews. And like I said yesterday, this also affects the FDA as well. So those are the people that inspect our food, and those are the people that issue like the recalls on our food. So as you know, we're in the middle of another recall for another product, and it seems like this is the third or fourth in at least the last week or the last 2 weeks, you know what I mean? So this article also mentions and touches on travel and tourism. Travel economy could lose $1 billion every week in a shutdown. The U.S. Travel Association warned in a letter to congressional leadership last week. Worries about airport delays or national park closures can curb travel plans. So I know that in the last shutdown, there was nobody there to pick up garbage. Trash cans at national parks overflowed. And who wants to go to that? You know what I mean? So I'm going to continue the article. Most Transportation Security Administration employees and air traffic controllers will work without pay, according to plans published by the Homeland Security and Transportation Departments. But prior shutdowns will still cause problems. In 2019, many TSA staffers called in absent from work, closing security checkpoints and causing delays at some airports. So plan ahead. And like I said, this also touches on the National Park Service. The National Park Service plans to keep roads, trails, and memorials generally open according to a new contingency plan posted Tuesday. Parks that collect visitor fees at entrance gates will use those balances to help provide visitor services, such as collecting trash and maintaining restrooms. Good, they learned from the last time. So that's good. This explanatory article might be updated periodically. Again, this is the Wall Street Journal, and they are commenting on the government shutdown and it affecting the economy. So, how is the government shutdown going to affect you? I know the economy in general affects me as far as it's slowing down, and real estate investors. So we'll see what happens in the future. Let's look at another article, shall we? If you guys have any questions, I do think that there is some breaking news at the Washington Post. This one is Supreme Court allows Lisa Cook to remain on the federal board for now. So this is the person that President Trump let go. The Supreme Court on Wednesday ruled that Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook can remain in her job for now and announced it will keep up a high stakes case over President Donald Trump's attempt to remove her from the central bank. The court will hear arguments in the case in January, and its temporary ruling will last at least until then. So Lisa Cook is still in her current position until then. Lower courts allowed Cook to keep her position. The Trump administration had asked the High Court to turn over those decisions and allow Trump to remove Cook immediately. The High Court's decision to hear the case sets up a showdown over the independence of the central bank, which sets interest rates. And as we know in the past, with his last presidency, Donald Trump did want those interest rates to come down. It was hypothesized that it was because it would be in his benefit. He is a real estate developer. He does obtain loans, uses those loans to invest in real estate, and he either does because he invests in hotels, occupancy, golf courses, things like that. So it really would have benefited him if interest rates were lower, but how that affects everything else, we don't know. But I'm going to continue with this article. So the High Court's decision to hear the case sets up a showdown over the independence of the central bank, which sets interest rates and is tasked with taming inflation. So if they don't do this right, inflation can go up even higher. And I already know that our groceries are going up higher. If you haven't noticed, if you haven't noticed and your grocery bill is still the same, please put in the chat where we can find the cheap groceries and the cheap gas, the cheap energy, because we all need that right now. This case could have major ramifications for businesses and consumers, right? Because we're all trying to get loans. I work in off-market real estate. I help people find that real estate that they need to invest in, that they obtain to do Section 8, to do whatever. This can affect everything. You know what I mean? So at least for right now until January, things are going to be a little bit stable, I believe, as far as this sector goes. What do you guys think? Do you think things will be the same, or what? You know, how does this affect you? Let me see. I am trying to do two things at once. I thought I could get comments. I guess I'll just do that later. Okay, so we'll just continue. And we're all getting ready for Taylor Swift's new rollout. As you know, she's having a kind of like, I want to call it a watch party, but it's like a release party at AMC theaters. Basically, I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe this is going to be centered around her lead singer, the death of Ophelia, which is rumored to be about Blake Lively, just to give you a little tea on that. If you haven't checked it out, I do have a podcast series on Blake Lively called Blake Lively. If you're interested in some books, let's take a look at some books for all those readers. Okay, how about Heart the Lover by Lily King? And this looks like it's going to be Gatsby inspired nickname Jordan becomes swept up in a friendship and love triangle with two star students in her literature class. Decades later, she'll have to confront the lasting consequences of their trio. Ooh. All the Way to the River by Elizabeth Gilbert. Looks like a long time friendship began a relationship with after Ezra was diagnosed with terminal cancer. This memoir chronicles Gilbert's grief and their brightly burning tumultuous relationship, complicated by Elias's substance abuse and Gilbert's ex and love addiction. If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. Little Movements by Lauren Morrow. The Vanishing Place by Zoe Rankin. Does This Make Me Funny by Zosia Mamet. It's about essays. Nowhere Girl by Carla Ciccone. Is that, I think I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Coffee Moon by Keith Rawson. Looks like a vampire book. The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. 20-year saga of friendship and adulthood. We Love You, Bunny, a novel. That one is by Mona Awad. To the Moon and Back by Elenia Ramage. Looks like a good one. The Impossible Fortune by Richard Osman. Alchemist by Sin Lin Yu. Tourist Season by Bren Weaver. The Lost Story of Eva Fuentes by Chanel Cleaton. Those are some good books to read. I did want to go over a health and wealth section, but first, we'll talk about the new drama with Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. As you know, or as you will know, news broke this week that Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban will be separating. Unfortunately, and Nicole Kidman filed divorce papers. Now, I thought they were going to go on forever. I thought they were going to be that golden couple that goes on forever. But unfortunately, they weren't. They did not make it that far. Well, they made it pretty far, 19 years. But it is rumored that Keith Urban actually was unfaithful and Nicole Kidman was very disappointed. And it turns out that there may have been some song lyrics that alluded to that on Keith Urban's part, where he sings about Maggie and a guitar. And it turns out that Maggie may be a new band member on his band who plays the guitar. It is also noted that Nicole Kidman is also moving to Portugal, or is trying to, or is attempting to move to Portugal. So that's kind of heartbreaking. And like the stream said, we're going to follow up on Secretary of War Hegseth's military leadership meeting, which I thought honestly there was going to be some more juicy tidbits to that. Basically, what I got from it and watching it was basically there's a lot of power there on President Trump's side. If he doesn't like you, he'll get rid of you. And that's a ton of experience. And not many people go on to be generals. You know what I mean? Not many people enlist in the military. And even then, not many people stay in to reach that rank because you're in, you know, 20, 30, 40 years. Some of these people have been in since 17, 18 years old. And what I've noticed about Department of War or Department of Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is I have not yet seen him in uniform. And previous to him, all of the other secretaries have worn uniforms. And when you wear a uniform, you have to display your rank insignia along with your award, your decorated awards, your ribbons, your medals, your marksman pieces. And I've noticed that Pete Hegseth does not wear his military uniform. He does have military experience. I believe he was in the National Guard, an officer in the National Guard. And then he went on to Fox News, been deployed. But you basically wear your military service on your uniform, at least on your dress uniform. And Pete Hegseth has not worn his uniform. He's not wearing his alphas. Where is his alphas? He's not wearing it. And I think that is by design, because if he does, he's going to be outed as a lower rank to everybody else, not only as far as decorations and awards and maybe as far as weapons and marksmanship, but also in years of service, campaigns, war campaigns, humanitarian campaigns. You wear that. And Pete Hegseth, we don't know where you've been, which can lead to a lack of credibility if you're interested in that side of things. If you're interested in the military experience, take a look at a military member's alpha uniform, their what we call their dress uniform. Okay, it's the equivalent to, you know, not a tuxedo, but maybe what a lawyer would wear, formal dress wear, you know, the equivalent of what President Trump would wear, would be the equivalent of what you would expect someone who's in service and who's elected by Congress or Senate to wear, especially if you have military experience. You wear your rank, you wear your experience on your uniform, especially your awards. And I would think we would see more from him, but we don't. Another interesting thing is Pete Hegseth mentioned appearance and how he doesn't want to see fat generals walk down the halls. You know, President Donald Trump has also mentioned appearance. So it's interesting. I'm wondering if it's because they both agree and this is about physical fitness and running a better PFT. And speaking of PFT, physical fitness test, which is something that all enlisted persons have to do. I believe I believe it's every quarter. I may be wrong. I am so sorry. Someone correct me. Please do in the chat. Correct me what that is. But I believe it's every quarter is where you do a PFT and a weigh-in. And if you don't meet your weigh-in, you get measured. So they'll measure your neck. I believe they'll measure your waist. Um, I think they might even measure your wrist, and they calculate it as far as percentages. And all of this is regulated by the Department of Defense. These rules and these weight standards, you have to be a certain weight per height in order to serve in the military. If you're over, they have a right to remediate you, and then they have the right to discharge you if you don't meet remediation. It's the same with the PFT. If you can't meet the correct run time, you're in a different class. And the lower class, if you don't meet those standards, you're cut. So I can understand a little bit of it as you're looking at this general and you're thinking maybe you don't meet the physical fitness standards because there's a weight criteria. So if the weight criteria say, for example, I'll use female, um if you're 5'3", you have a weight limit of 130 pounds, or no, 137 pounds, and you can't go over that. If you go over that, then they start trying to determine essentially your body fat percentage, because they don't want you to be too unhealthy. They want you to be healthy enough to run. They want you to be healthy enough to make it upstairs. They want you healthy enough to go and to combat immediately if you need to. And if you're carrying an extra weight, that's going to be more difficult for you. And for some people, that's really difficult to be in those weight standards, you know. Um, so it's just a point. Um, I did want to mention and cover the tariffs and the union, because it is interesting. Um, President Donald Trump recently put tariffs 100% on movies made outside of the US. Now, it caught my attention because the Teamsters union was in support of this. So I'm going to read this article, little bits of this article. This is from usnews.com. And this is by Reuters. Reuters wrote this on the tariffs. Oops, there's a paywall, so I'll go to something else. Okay. And this is also piggybacking on his other tariffs of big pharma and furniture. This is mediapost.com. Foreign movies, furniture, pharma, latest to face possible tariffs. President Donald Trump said in Truth Social post on Monday, so this is a couple days ago, he will be imposing 100% tariff on any and all movies that are made outside of the United States. And this is according to CNN Business. Trump did not specify when or how the tariffs could be enacted. Trump made a similar threat to tariff foreign-made films in May, but the White House quickly softened its tone and no action was taken, according to CNBC. It was unclear what, if anything, was different between Trump's prior threat and this current one. The latest announcement follows a sweeping round of tariffs. President Trump announced last week on Truth Social that includes a 100% tariff on some pharmaceutical products, 50% tariffs on kitchen cabinets, 30% on upholstered furniture, and 25% on heavy trucks. I actually would love to know how much of our heavy trucks we are importing. And if we are importing the parts and the components, or like the whole entire thing, you know what I mean? Because that could really hit the trucking industry, because I don't know if you know this, but the tariff is actually passed on to the business owner. It's not actually passed on to the China. I say China because that's the main focus, but the other country, they're not paying that. They're charging us that tariff. Um so I'm trying to just find how much this affects Pence. Oh, this is just talking about trucks for sale and all that stuff. Okay. But anyways, where was I? Back to where was I? In farmers kitchen cabinets. Um This is the article. While Trump said that pharmaceutical companies that are breaking ground on manufacturing facilities or have facilities under construction in the United States won't be hit with the 100% duties, he gave